Vyajavayena harina nilayam tadiyam. Word for word. Yea, all those. Cha, totally. Palamba, the demon named Palamba. Kara, Denakasura. Dadura, Bakasura. Keshi, the Keshi demon. Arista, the demon Aristasura. Mala, a wrestler in the court of Kamsa. Iba, Kuvalyaya Pida. Kamsa, the king of Mathura and maternal uncle of Krishna. Yavanaha, the kings of Persia and other adjoining places. Kapi, Dvida, Pundaraksha Ajaha, Pundarakya, and others. Anye, others. Cha, as much as. Shalva, King Shalva. Kuja, Narakasura. Balbala, King Balbala. Dantavakra, the brother of Shishupal, a dead rival of Krishna's. Saptoksha, King Saptoksha. Sambada, King Sambada. Vidurat, King Vidurat. Rukmimukya, the brother of Rukmini, the first queen of Krishna at Dwarka. Yeah, all those. Va, either. Midu, in the battlefield. Samitasalanaha, all very powerful. Atachapaha, well equipped with bows and arrows. Kamboja, the king of Kamboja. Macha, the king of Dwabanga. Kuru, the sons of Dhritarashtra. Srinjaya, King Srinjaya. Kaikeya Ajaha, the king of Kaikeya and others. Yashanti would attain. Adarshanam, impersonal merging within the Brahmajyoti. Alam, what to speak of. Bala, Baladev, the elder brother of Krishna. Partha, Arjuna. Bhima, the second Pandava. Vyajavayena, by the false names. Harina, by Lord Hari. Nilayam, the abode. Tadiyam, of him. Translation, all demoniac personalities like Pralamba, Deneko, Baka, Keshi, Arista, Chanura, Mastuka, Kavalya, Pida, Elephant, Kamsa, Yavana, Narakasura and Pundraksha, great marshals like Shalva, Dvidvada, Monkey and Balvala, Dantavakra, the seven bulls, Sambara, Vidurat and Rukmi, as also great warriors like Kamboja, Matsya, Kuru, Sanjaya and Kaikeya would all fight vigorously, either with the Lord Hari directly or with him under his names of Baladev, Arjuna, Bhima, etc. And the demons thus being killed would attain either the impersonal Brahmajyoti or his personal abode in the Vaikuntha planets. Purport. All manifestations in both the material and spiritual worlds are demonstrations of the different potencies of Lord Krishna. The personality of Godhead Baladev is his immediate personal expansion, and Bhima, Arjuna, etc. are his personal associates. The Lord would appear, and he does so whenever he appears with all his associates and potencies. Therefore, the rebellious souls like the demons and demoniac men mentioned by names like Palamba would be killed either by the Lord himself or by his associates. All these affairs will be clearly explained in the 10th canto, but we should know well that all the above mentioned living entities killed would attain salvation either by being merged in the Brahmajyoti of the Lord, or being allowed to enter into the abodes of the Lord called Vaikunthas. This has already been explained by Bhishmadev in the first canto. All persons who participated in the battlefield of Kurukshetra or otherwise with the Lord or with Baladev, etc., would benefit by attaining spiritual existence according to the situation of their mind at the time of death. Those who recognized the Lord would enter Vaikuntha, and those who estimated the Lord as only a powerful being would attain salvation by merging into the spiritual existence of the impersonal Brahmajyoti of the Lord. But every one of them would get release from material existence. Since such is the benefit of those who played with the Lord inimically, one can imagine what would be the position of those who devoutly serve the Lord in transcendental relationship with Him. So it's a list of the who's who of the demons in Krishna's pastime. So the whole range there. So Pralamba, Denuka. Of course, Baka, there was 2 Baka demons. So the Baka in Krishna's pastimes was the demon who took the form of which? What? The duck, crane, yeah. So Baka, so he tried to kill Krishna, but Krishna took hold of each of his beak and bifurcated him that way. Of course, there is another Baka that Bhima killed. So there's that whole story from the Mahabharata when Baka was a very powerful Rakshasa demon. Rakshasa means their favourite food is other human beings, like cannibals. And of course they eat anything, but particularly human beings is the top of the menu. And he was living near a village near Ekachakra in like today's West Bengal. And so the head chief of the village, because basically Baka was just coming and grabbing anybody and eating them and basically terrorising the whole village. So they made the arrangement that every day they would sacrifice one member of the village, and he would come to Baka with a cartload of food. And so in that way every family took its turn. So it was sort of wasn't a good arrangement. It was better than just wholesale slaughter. So when that cart arrived at Baka's cave, Baka would come out. He would eat all the food in the cave. He would eat the bullock that was towing the cart, and he would eat the person who was driving the cart. So that was his daily diet. So it happened that Kunti and the 5 Pandavas, headed by Yudhisthira, their travels through the forest, they came and stayed in with a Brahmana in that village. And one morning, while the Pandava brothers were out just begging for their sustenance, Kunti heard the family who was hosting them. They were crying very mournfully. And so Kunti, she went and said, what's wrong? Is there anything I can do? And they said, no, there's nothing you can do. It's just our turn today. Every family has to sacrifice one of their members each day to feed Baka. And it's our turn today. Our father, he has to, or I think it was the wife speaking, my husband, he has to go and he'll be eaten by Baka. And Kunti, because she was a guest and felt obliged to do something for the family, said, no, it's all right, my son Bhima will go. But the Brahmana's wife said, you're my guest, there's no way this can happen. So no, it's okay, Bhima is very powerful, and he'll take care of everything. So anyway, she was convinced. And so when the Pandavas come back, Kunti told Bhima that this is what you should do. So Yudhisthira was very upset that Kunti made this arrangement without speaking to him, because they were depending on Bhima in the upcoming war with the Kauravas. He was like the main, warrior. But Bhima, he was like very happy, because he was like a great warrior, and for one who was actually a warrior, the chance for fighting was like that's his enjoyment. So Bhima got really fired up, and so he took the cart along to Baka. And because one of the names of Bhima, the Garuda, ferocious eater, because they were going out, begging, and they'd get a little bit, and whatever they collected would be divided into 6 pieces. So half of it, or divided into half rather. So one half the Pandavas and Kunti, the 4 Pandavas and Kunti would eat, and the other half Bhima would eat. But it wasn't a lot, So when Bhima heard he's taking all this food, he thought, I'm having a great feast today. So he stopped the cart at Baka's cave, and he just sat on the cart and started eating everything. It was like a big feast. Best feast he's had for a long time. Baka, he was wondering where his meal is, and he came out and saw what was happening, and in a rage he charged towards Bhima and started smashing him on his back. And Bhima didn't even take any notice, he just kept on eating. And finally he'd finished, and then he got off the cart and washed his hands and mouth and turned around and said, "Okay, Baka, now we can fight." So it was a big fight, and I've heard a couple of different versions of how Baka was killed. One was that Bhima grabbed him in a big bear hug. I think that Baka had 2 horns on his head, and Bhima ripped them off, and big bear hug, and just crushed his chest and pushed the horns into the body of Baka. Another version was that basically Baka was on the ground on his stomach, and Bhima put his foot on his back and just bent him in half and broke his back. Anyway, whatever. The end result was Baka was killed, and the whole village was so relieved as a result. So that's the two Bakas. Keshi demon, of course, is the horse demon. Arista was the bull demon, I think. Chanura and Mustika, who were they? And they were the wrestlers in Kamsa's. They were the big, powerful wrestlers. They were the ones who were meant to kill Krishna and Balaram. But they were Krishna and Balaram made short work of them. And Kavalyapida, they came across Kavalyapida. He was originally. There's a whole story of Kavalyapida. There's actually Jarasandha Kavalyapida belonged to Jarasandha. So obviously we know Kamsa was a very powerful king, and he basically subjugated so many of these demons and brought them under his control and sent them to kill Kamsa. So one time Jarasandha, I think it was like there was he was threatening or come to fight to overthrow Kamsa. Anyway, whatever the situation, Jarasandha's elephant Kavalyapida was there, but Kamsa, he was so powerful, with one foot he threw Kavalyapida over the river Jamuna at Jarasandha's feet, and just to show his power. So immediately Jarasandha more or less submitted to Kamsa. He could see how powerful he was, and he made the alliance with Kamsa. He gave his 2 daughters, Asti and Prapti, to Kamsa. So this is one of the reasons why Jarasandha, of course he was basically born more or less inimical to Krishna, but he became a great enemy of Krishna, because when Krishna killed Kamsa, that made his 2 daughters, who was Kamsa's wives, widows. So he wasn't very happy about that. So Kamsa Yavana, as a word for word, was the Persian kings. I have heard maybe from Turkey, area modern day Turkey, but the word for word is the Persian kings. Yavanas. Narakasura. Narakasura is an interesting case, because he was actually the son of Vishnu and Bhumi, the earth goddess. So when Vishnu appeared as Varaha and he picked up the Earth planet and re-established it. By that touch of the Earth planet, Narakasura took birth. I guess maybe Naraka at that point, but it said that due to bad association of other demons, I did have it written here somewhere. Banasura, yes, Banasura. Due to bad association of Banasura, he became demoniac. So we have the story that Narakasura, who was always up to mischief, he stole Lord Varuna's umbrella and Mother Aditi's earrings, and also took over the playground of the demigods known as Mani Parvat. So he was just causing so many problems. So the Lord thought he's going to have to do something about that. So he went to Narakasura's capital, and one of his colleagues, Mura demon, first Vishnu took his head off with his disc, and then he killed Narakasura. Of course, there was a big battle with those two. They were very difficult to kill, but ultimately they were both killed. Narakasura, Pundraka. We know the story of Pundraka from Krishna book. He sent a messenger to Krishna, who was at Dwarka at the time, and said that actually I am Vasudeva and that you should come and surrender to me. And anyway, he had a whole spiel like that. He'd actually tacked extra 2 arms on his back somehow, and he had the four items of Vishnu. So in that way he was claiming to be Vasudeva. And so when Krishna and in the assembly at Dwarka, they heard that message, they laughed very loudly. And then he sent back the messenger basically saying that, O foolish king, the symbols you are talking about, I shall certainly throw them at you. Because Pundraka told Vishnu to give up his symbols because he's just a pretend Vasudeva. So I'll certainly throw them at you, so meaning he was going to throw his Sudarshan chakra at him, and when you are lying dead surrounded by vultures, you will certainly be the food for dogs. So he wasn't happy when somebody pretends to be the Supreme Person. So Pundraka, and so many names: Salva, Davida, the monkey Balvala, Dantavakra. Of course, Dantavakra was originally one of the giant Vijay. We know giant Vijay were cursed to be demons in 3 lifetimes. It was Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakasipu, and then Ravan and Kumbhakarn, and then in Krishna Leela was Dantavakra and Shishupal. So Shishupal isn't particularly mentioned here, but so this was his last life as the 3 being cursed as demons 3 times. So the history of Shishupal, that when he was born, I believe he had 3 eyes, I think it was, and there was a prophecy, like a voice from the air saying that whoever's lap this boy lies on, if the eye disappears, this is the person who's going to kill him. And so his mother was in great anxiety, and every time he had an opportunity, he'd put her son into laps of so many different people just to see who was going to kill him. And eventually he had the opportunity to put him on the lap of Krishna, and immediately that eye disappeared. So she begged him, please, please don't kill my son. And Krishna, he promised that he would only kill his son if he uttered more than 100 insults. And so we know in the assembly house when Shishupal, he was very upset that Krishna was going to receive the first offering from the whole yagna. And he started insulting Krishna like anything. So Krishna wasn't saying anything, but with his fingers he was just counting, how many insults there was. Of course, the previous acharyas say that they give different meanings to these so-called insults. They would say actually the meaning is very auspicious. They would change the whole meaning around. And so in this way, I did see it, Shishupal, that, where did I put it? Shishupal, that seeing Krishna's attractive features and remembering that he had been killed by Krishna twice before, and by uttering Krishna's names in the assembly. So he was uttering names in a critical, scolding way, but actually he was getting purified by those names, because there was also, a positive meanings to them. So he was actually, while he was criticising, he was actually becoming purified at the same time. And so he thus become free from the multitude of sins which had caused his hatred. So, the whole idea, those three births, Jai and Vijay, they were under the influence of the yoga of anger. So there was a connection with Krishna, but it was through anger. They were always very angry. I did read somewhere that, or heard that when Shishupal was born, his first words were, "I hate Krishna." So he was always angry like that. But just before his death, he became purified by chanting Krishna's names unknowingly. So when Krishna threw his chakra, his demoniac tendencies were destroyed. So thus purified, he saw the brilliant form of the Supreme Lord in human form. His demon body was destroyed, and he attained the embrace of the Supreme Brahman. So it brings up an interesting point that I did hear one class on this verse by Romapad Maharaj. And he brought up the point that we hear that Krishna doesn't interfere with our free will. So these demons are very inimical to Krishna. They wanting to kill Krishna. So if Krishna kills them and liberates them, isn't that interfering with their free will? So that was the point he raised up, which is an interesting point. But his response to that understanding was that firstly, our in nature is not demoniac. Our in nature is pure spirit soul. But at that point, they're covered by that, that inimical sort of mentality, that demonic mentality. But that's not actually who we are as spirit souls. At that time, they were covered, but originally pure spirit soul. So what Krishna is doing by liberation is taking away that demoniac covering, so that all that's left is the pure spirit soul. But the point is that even though they were very demoniac and scolding, criticising Krishna, it is to Krishna that they're focusing their mentality. So even though it's unfavourable association, if you like, but still it's towards Krishna. So their anger, etc., is focused at Krishna. So all Krishna did was take away the demoniac covering. He's not envious, he's not angry like that or spiteful. He's equipoise, but and he doesn't see the demons as horrible people, but they're just covered by that demoniac covering. Of course, the other side of it is those who are demoniac but don't focus on Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says he casts them down into demoniac species, basically to protect themselves from themselves, so they don't keep creating, sinful activities. If they're down in the lower species, they're not accumulating karma anymore. Like that. So anyway, so it was an interesting point that he brought up, that he's not really interfering with their free will, because their focus is Krishna, even though it's unfavourable. So, but he just takes that covering away, and then they're pure spirit souls. So I might have touched on it earlier in another class, but I did hear it was a nice sort of analogy that we can say that if one's intention is bad but action is good, Krishna is only seeing the action. He just sees the positive. I think there's a word for it, Jahi Janardana, something. I was trying to look. Bhava Griha Janardana. Grahi Janardana. So it means one who only sees the devotional aspect of an action. So if the intention is bad but the action is good, Krishna's only going to see the action. So the example of that was Putana. So what was Putana's intention? To kill Krishna with a poisoned breast. So the intention was bad, but the action was good in that she was approaching Krishna to offer her breast milk like a mother or a nurse. So therefore her position was, she achieved such a high position as like Krishna's nurse. So as I said, he was only seeing the action. On the opposite way, if the intention is bad but the action is good, Krishna will only see the intention. He's only just see the good of that person. So example of that's when Krishna came to Hastinapur and he visited Vidura and his wife in their house. And they were in so much ecstasy, and his wife, she was in a devotional ecstasy. She was peeling bananas and giving Krishna the peel and throwing away the banana. But Krishna was taking that peel, eating it and saying, this is delicious, because there was so much bhakti there. So the intention was good. She was offering banana, just the action was bad. It was the peel instead of the banana. But then what happens if the intention is bad and the action is also bad? What happens then? We say if one becomes remorseful and asks for forgiveness, even then Krishna will forgive. And so the example you can use like Jagai and Madai. So their intention and action, that was all bad. Everything they were doing, they would purposely do things. I did hear that they would circumambulate Tulsi, but they would do it opposite way round, counterclockwise, which is meant to be inauspicious. So they would do everything bad, everything wrong, intoxicated, so many things. But and even tried to hurt Nityananda. But when they begged for forgiveness, Krishna still forgave them. So even the intention is bad and the action is bad, if one becomes remorseful, beg for forgiveness and doesn't continue their constant sinful activities, even then Krishna will forgive. So sometimes you get this mentality, particularly in other religious traditions, that that God is always angry. He's just sending everybody to hell. He can never be pacified, never be peaceful, etc. But that's not our understanding. To some ways, it's a bit of a transference of their own mentality. If one is very angry and hateful within themselves, they'll just transfer that onto God. Maybe that's part of it, I don't know. But it's also, can be, different preachers, like you hear about hate preachers who they try to put the fear of God into everybody so that, they'll have control over the people. I'm sure that's an element as well. But, from Vedic literature, we don't see that Krishna is always angry. He's always described as a slight smile on his face, always. So... sometimes he manifests transcendental anger, like Lord Nrsimhadev, but then he's pacified, and then he's, and we say that Lord Nrsimhadev, he's death personified for the demons, the atheists, but for the devotees, he's very, very kind. So we see in Mayapur, they sometimes call Lord Nrsimhadev their Dr. Nrsimhadev, because he helps the devotees, cures them and helps, and so many reciprocations we hear. Lord Nrsimhadev is directly, interacting with the devotees in such positive ways. So, in Islam, Christianity, especially Christianity, the idea of God-fearing. They talk about if you're a God-fearing Christian, that's meant to be very good. And I guess it's better than being an atheist. But that fearing, that's part of the Aishvarya, the awe and reverence. Part of that is fearful. If there's a very great and powerful personality, there's an element of fear there. So, and that's sort of the mood in the Vaikuntha planets, of awe and reverence. But when we read the Damodar Astika prayers, that's in the mood, like Ramai Swami was saying, in the mood of Braj, that you're not seeing Krishna in the mood of awe and reverence, but just says young baby Krishna who needs to be looked after, like that. So, and that's what actually pleases Krishna more, when somebody wants to look after them like that. He just plays the role of a helpless baby and everybody's, looking after him. He likes that. But, he accepts the worship when it's in awe and reverence, but it's not as pleasing as in that Braj mood. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gives a list of different qualities which are represented by these demons. I'll just read a couple of them out that we have mentioned here. Dinekasura, the ass or donkey demon, represents the evil of licentiousness, gain, honour and aspiration for selfish end, gross materialistic intelligence, ignorance of spiritual knowledge. So, when we're performing our spiritual our devotional service, chanting, etc., we can be thinking, if we become familiar with these qualities, the whole idea is to burn them away through the fire of devotional service. But first we need to be aware that they're actually there. We can't deal with them if we don't know they're there. So these different demons, I'll just mention at the end, Bhaktivinoda Thakur tells us how to become free. So Palambasura, he is representing lusty inclination, desire for personal gain and honour. Bakasura, the stork demon, cunning, duplicity, deceptiveness and false types of behaviour. Dinekasura, I mentioned him. Sankachuda, we heard about yesterday, tendency towards acquiring name and fame and desire for sensuous enjoyment under the plea of devotion. Arista, the bull demon, pride arising from indulging in false religions invented by cheaters, which causes neglect of bhakti. So all these anartas, one or more we may have in our heart, but through the fire of devotional service we can slowly, burn them away. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says the devotee who worships the holy name should first petition the Lord for the strength to cast out all these unfavourable tendencies, and should pray thus before Lord Hari on a daily basis. By doing this regularly, the devotee's heart will eventually become purified. Sri Krishna has killed a number of demons which may arise in the kingdom of the heart. So in order to destroy these problems, the devotee must cry very humbly before the Lord and admit defeat. Then the Lord will nullify all contaminations. So that's a few of the demons that we're familiar with. All very interesting, but we'll end there. If there's any questions at all, yes.
Culturally, there's you hear about the days of Baka. There were kings, there were alliances historically, and the kings were very powerful. And then you get this village who set their citizens as part of the venue. And it seems odd cultural when you always talk about Kshatriyas and those very powerful warriors. Then you go to this village that doesn't even have a leader to speak of a Kshatriya king. That has no alliances, which back then the alliances were a big thing. And then these guys that march on each other and no one says anything. Does that sit culturally?
Well, it does mention the Mahabharata that the king of that area was very weak. He was like a minor king. You get major powerful kings who subjugate others, but they're still allowed to keep their kingdom. They just offer tribute to the powerful king. So there was a minor king in the area, but he was weak. He wasn't able to do anything about Baka. So he basically just left the village to its fate, basically. So that's how it's mentioned.
The other point about you mentioned Krishna takes away the free will of a liberating person. I always thought that our philosophy says that when you stand in the rain, you get wet. When you touch the fire, you get burnt. When you eat too much, you get sick. So it's only by you associating with certain aspects that you get the result. So Krishna is always known to be equal with everyone. Because when you approach Krishna, that's okay.
Yeah.
You get liberation. So in that sense, it is equitable. Is that the word?
Equivocal?
No, well, Krishna is fair.
Equipoised?
It's not like he takes away the free will by liberating the person that deals with him. It's like when you stand in the rain, you get wet, but that's the fire. So you come and deal with Krishna, you're going to get liberated.
No, that was just the classroom of Hart Swami. He just brought up that point that some may think, well, he's a demon. Why is Krishna liberating? He hates Krishna. You know, he's interfering with his free will. But he dealt with that by the explanation that I gave, that it was to Krishna, like the examples you gave, is to Krishna that the anger is being focused. So Krishna says, okay, that's fine, you're coming to me, I'll just take that little bit of covering away. And so it was just an interesting point that he brought up. Anything else? Yes, Sati?
Just regarding what you said about when the action is good but the intention is bad, and that Krishna just sees the good in it. Now I'm just wondering if that person actually attains any of the bad karmic reactions of having a bad intention, because I guess while the action is good but the intention is bad, there's still some karmic reactions in that.
Well, there would be, but at least for devotees, like we understand by just engaging devotional service, chanting, that karma can be easily removed, you know. So the problem is if we start become offensive, like Nama Parad, Vaishnava Parad, etc., those offences, aparads, are much harder to get rid of. So it depends on the level that we're talking about. You know, I mean, like Vidura's wife just offering the bananas. There's no real heavy karma involved, you know,
that it's something good to clarify for new people.
Sure.
They might just get stuck in that but you know, the action was good, but the intention was good.
But because they're offering it to Krishna, you know, that action, whatever Krishna's accepting, there's going to be purification there. So Krishna is so powerful that he can take away all these sort of impurities. I think Krishna Rupa.
Thank you so much for the really interesting class. It's really lovely to hear all these past times. Just a couple of things. One is just speaking a little bit more to what Sati was saying. What about when the action is good but the intent is bad? And that when I was thinking about that, it brought me around to how devotional service can be done in different modes, like mode of ignorance, mode of passion, mode of goodness. Can you speak a little about that?
Well,
that's one thing.
Sure, yeah.
And then the second thing was when Jai and Vijay were cursed, they could take birth, I think it's 7 times as devotees or 3 times as demons. And Krishna actually can't find in the spiritual world, so you know, he wanted to have some worthy you know, demons to fight with. And then they wanted to take that 4th birth as Jagai and Madai. And I presume that's because they wanted to have some interaction in Chaitanya River. So there's not 2.
As far as Jagai Madai, I mean, I've heard that generally it's understood that was Jai and Vijay, but I don't know whether it's 100% confirmed by Sastra. I've always heard that it is. That's sort of like a guest appearance, but the main point that you know, we hear that Jai and Vijay were cursed by the 4 Kumaras, but it even started earlier than that, when Lakshmi came to see her husband Vishnu, and Jai and Vijay said, no, he's sleeping, you can't come, and she got very angry and cursed them that you'll have to take birth, whatever the curse was. I think it's in one of the Puranas, but I have heard that story mentioned, and the result of that curse was they were cursed by the 4 Kumaras. So it was like, it goes back a long way. But also, Jai and Vijay were praying to the Lord that please allow us to take part in your pastime so you can fulfill your fighting spirit. So you could even say that goes back even before Lakshmi, that they had the desire to fulfill Krishna's, and, so one event after the other. But as far as what was the first one about the action is good?
The action is good, the intent is bad, and in relation to the types of devotion.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, when we say devotional service, devotional service is devotional service. There's different levels, but, sometimes say devotional service in the mode of ignorance is like nodding off while you're chanting. It's sort of like tamagoon chanting, if you like, but still Krishna's name is there. So the intention is good. Maybe the action isn't so good, but it's still focused towards Krishna.
Yeah, but I'm saying if the action is good, but the intent is bad. So one may do worship or service or whatever, but your intention is actually for name and fame.
Yeah, well, that's everybody. That's karma mishra bhakti. It's mixed devotional service. We want to please Krishna, but we want to enjoy a little bit ourselves. So in time that goes away, but that's everybody. Our service is mixed some way or another. Yeah, what to do. Okay. Thank you very much. Out of time. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.